So coming up this Friday on ESPN is going to be the PFL finals for the welterweight and featherweight divisions, as well as a few also bonus fights as well. This is going to be a very quick video. I will be honest, I was actually considering not covering the PFL on YouTube this week because I am quite busy, of course, with university, as you guys all love to hear from me, but my eyes, I'm blinking a lot at the moment because I've been sitting at my PC all day just working away on an assignment, and then I did some tape study last minute for the video. So yeah, my eyes are shot. So if I'm blinking a lot, that is why. Let's get into it. Sarek Shields versus Nick Meck. I will admit I haven't really looked into this one too much, but Nick Meck is a big wrestler with not much cardio, and Sarek Shields just somehow managed to beat Joseph Luciano. I think that Sarek Shields does win for that reason. And now for Nathan Kelly versus Frederik Dupras. Frederik Dupras genuinely only really has one thing that he does. I'm not even kidding when I say this. He is a guillotine guy. It's all he does throughout his entire career. He's pulled guillotine, or he's pulled anaconda, or some sort of front choke. And he even pulled it against Gabriel Braga and nearly actually got it in the first round, which would have been a massive upset win if he was to do that. So aside from the massive guillotine threat that he does like to jump, I think that Nathan Kelly should be a little bit kind of more well-rounded everywhere. Now, the thing about Kelly is I think the PFL really expected this guy to be their guy from Ireland, to be their superstar. Nathan Kelly has headlined PFL Europe events before, and he's also been given some layups in the Bellator events as well against guys that they've just had on their roster and have been kind of giving to people as layups. And I think that just PFL really thought he was going to be the man, but he just didn't quite really turn out to be that way so far. But he's still only 28 years old and definitely probably could potentially be a star for them in the future. I do think that Kelly is a bit more well-rounded than Dupras. As long as he can defend a submission in the first round, I think Kelly should be alright. He is actually a grappler himself, but I think in this matchup, Kelly would be smartest to keep the fight on the feet, in my opinion, and then work some grappling maybe later on in the fight. Husein Kadimagomev takes on Kyle Driscoll. This fight is very, very intriguing to me because actually I went into this fight expecting to pick Kadimagomev. Now, I know a lot of people think that he is very fraudulent, which I will admit he actually is, to be honest. But I think he's still quite good. I think he's actually quite promising as well. I thought at 145 pounds, he definitely had quite a decent ceiling. Now, yes, he did lose to Zafar Mosin, but Zafar Mosin actually failed a drug test after that. But in that matchup, Kadimagomev looked alright in the first round, got his single leg takedowns that he likes to shoot, but then after he couldn't get the takedowns after the first round, he just kind of death the gas and didn't really have anything else to offer. Kyle Driscoll is another interesting sort of prospect to me. He's a guy that's fought in the Contender Series before, got a win, and then after that actually fought for the Cage Warriors title against George Hardwick, and I thought in that matchup his boxing actually seemed to be pretty good against a pretty good boxer in George Hardwick, of course. But the thing is, he hasn't fought for 2 years, and that scares me a lot. But the thing about this matchup is Kyle Driscoll actually does have a wrestling background himself. I think Kyle Driscoll has a very significant striking advantage here, and Kadimagomev is coming up from 145 pounds to 155 pounds. And if you look at Kyle Driscoll's fights, Kyle Driscoll is a big guy for lightweight, so I actually do think he's going to have a size advantage here over Kadimagomev, and that could really maybe potentially help him just defend some takedowns and gas out Husein, who does have very bad cardio. I'm expecting this fight to kind of go along the lines of either Kadimagomev gets his single leg takedowns easily and wins in that way, or Driscoll can defend those takedowns initially quite well. Kadimagomev gasses out trying to get the takedowns, and Driscoll takes over and wins by knockout in round 3 or maybe round 2. And that's what I'm going to say happens. I think Driscoll is going to take over the fight if Kadimagomev does gas out as the underdog in this fight. And after that, we've got a couple big favorites. The first one is Jakub Kaszuba versus Sergio Cossio. Probably one of the worst predictions I've ever made on my channel was Sergio Cossio to defeat Didrik Sanders. Cossio, he looked so bad in that fight, you know, and he does look so bad. It was such a bad pick. But Cossio, he's actually a pretty talented guy. Like, he does have a lot of submission wins. He was on a pretty good win streak as well, fighting for a couple of good promotions in Mexico. I believe it was Luke's fight night. He was the champion for Luke's. Yeah, he was. And, he actually had a pretty good run there at one point. But the thing about Cossio, this guy on the feet, he is a victim. He has his hands low. He kind of has like a one hand high, one hand literally by his waist, and sometimes he has both hands by his waist, like he did against Cedric Sanders. Like, he's just terrible at striking. Jakub Kaszuba isn't amazing at striking, but he's a good wrestler. He's going to have a massive size advantage here. I think this is a situation where the PFL is trying to get Kaszuba a win here, so they can then put him on the PFL championship tournament in 2026. Is my guess. I think that Kaszuba wins. I think he wins by ground and pound TKO in probably round 2 or 3. Now we have Jordan Newman versus Eslam Abdul Baset. I do completely understand what the PFL are doing here. They gave Jordan Newman a Russian wrestler in Imam Shafi Aliyev, and he looked pretty good in that fight there with his wrestling, of course. And he beat Aliyev, and now they're giving him an Egyptian wrestler. So I guess they're just kind of matching him up against wrestlers from all over the world. And this is a big step down in competition for Newman. Abdul Baset, he is a wrestler. He is a big wrestler, but he doesn't really complete a lot of takedowns. Like, he shoots a lot of takedowns, but he spends most of his time in the clinch, and that is why he just doesn't get finishes, man. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. He just kind of stalls with a lot of control and stuff like that. Like, he just doesn't really do much to win the fight. He doesn't really do any damage. And the thing is, if he can't get the takedown, like he couldn't against Mike Shipman, it almost looked like he just kind of gassed out and gave up. And I do believe that Jordan Newman is going to be much better than Baset. I mean, he's minus 1100 in this fight. Baset doesn't really have any finishing threat, so I think that Newman should look good here. I think Newman actually probably gets on top of him and actually lands some pretty good ground and pound and gets a TKO in this fight. And now Asael Adjouj takes on Yves Landu, and I believe I actually have broken this fight down before, because this fight was actually booked for not too long ago. June, this fight was booked for, and I do believe I actually did break it down at that period of time. But here we go, we got it back again. Asael Adjouj is a very talented kickboxer from France. He's 6 foot tall at 145 pounds, and he actually got a submission win against Jose Perez, which was a bit of a surprise to me, because although Adjouj does have submission wins, he definitely, to me anyway, is much more of a striker, and he's a pretty good striker as well. I think that he's in a couple of pretty fun fights as well. Of course, before he got signed to the PFL, he was fighting for Bellator, and so was Yves Landu, actually. Yves Landu, pretty good win streak, a lot of pretty close wins on his record, but it is just mostly due to his style. Yves Landu is a kind of low-volume striker, very much a point-based striker, very much at this point being a veteran. He knows how to win rounds. He's coming off 2 split-decision wins, which were pretty close, but I think just kind of because Landu is such a veteran now at this point, he kind of knows what he needs to do to squeak out a round, squeak out a win, and with his point-based striking style, that's kind of what he does. Now, Landu does have good movement. He is going to be tricky to hit, but I do just think that Adjouj here is the better striker out of the two. I do think that Adjouj is going to be throwing out more volume, and ultimately I think he's going to land more strikes. So I think he does win a decision over Landu in this matchup. And now we have Movlid Khaybulaev fighting against Jesus Pinedo. This is the first of 2 championship bouts, and honestly, after I saw Khaybulaev have the worst performance against Jeremy Kennedy, I did have it that I was going to pick him to lose in the finals, and I actually did come close to picking him to beat Taekwon Kim, but I did pick Khaybulaev with low confidence in that fight. But that just kind of tells you how low I am on Khaybulaev right now, and I'm quite high on Jesus Pinedo. Now, I do believe that Jesus Pinedo is still a little bit flawed, still a little bit untested, despite having 32 professional fights in his career, but he hits hard. He's got a lot of power. He's coming off 2 massive wins, which he knocked out Adam Borix and Gabriel Braga in the first round. And that's the thing, though, that is a little bit concerning to me. We have only seen him fight these 2 rounds since 2023. He has been quite inactive. He won the $1 million. He took some time off, makes sense to me. And he's come back and he's just been dominating. So he's been looking good. But what is his takedown defense going to be like? Because he's taking on Khaybulaev, who is, despite being 5'6", a massive guy for 5'6", a big-time wrestler, and he's going to look to take down Jesus Pinedo probably quite early on into this fight. However, I do just think that ultimately Khaybulaev, he just doesn't have the striking defense to deal with Pinedo. You know, that Jeremy Kennedy was landing on him. Jeremy Kennedy was able to defend takedowns and land on him. We've also seen Khaybulaev TKO'd before. Now, of course, Daniel Pinedo was on probably, I think, like nearly everything that you could name. But still, Khaybulaev has been TKO'd before. And I think that Jesus Pinedo in this matchup, I think he is going to knock out Khaybulaev. Now, there is definitely a chance that Khaybulaev does just go out there and get the takedowns over and over and over again. And as I did say, that is an unknown about Jesus Pinedo's game at the moment because he's been inactive. And in general, I don't think we've really ever seen him have to deal with takedown defense aside from Bubba Jenkins. But he still knocked out Bubba Jenkins anyway. I like Pinedo here. He's going to have a massive size advantage, which is something that Khaybulaev is not used to. Khaybulaev is typically the larger fighter in the ring. So I think that Pinedo is going to go out there and knock out Khaybulaev in this fight. And now we can move up to the main event. And I do think that Logan Storley is a live underdog in this fight. However, you need to consider one thing, and this is what I needed to consider, because I was going to pick Storley before I kind of really looked into it a little bit more, and also realized this is a 5-round fight, right? I don't think Thaddeus beat Jason Jackson. Now, you can say what you want about that, but I thought that Jason Jackson won that fight. However, there was a lot of bad fight IQ from both guys on display in that matchup. And Jason Jackson, when he did go for them, he was getting the takedowns. And that's what Logan Storley does. He is a wrestler. He was, of course, involved in the Bellator Championship fight against Michael Venom Page, which sparked a great debate in the grand year of 2022 Bellator of damage versus control, which Logan Storley arguably didn't do as much damage as MVP did, but he did win on control with controlling against the cage a lot. And that kind of just tells you that he can go out there and he can wrestle if he needs to. However, the problem with Logan Storley is he just doesn't have finishing threats. He's been taking on, in my opinion, step downs in competition from the guys that he was fighting in Bellator. You know, when he was fighting for Bellator, he was fighting like pretty top guys, right? I mean, even MVP has now gone on to have a pretty good career in the UFC, and he's been taking on big step downs in competition. He's been big favorites in these matchups, and he's not finding much finishing threat. He just gets the takedown and he just holds his opponent down to the ground. And I do actually think that if Storley got the takedown on Thaddeus would struggle to get back up, even though Gene does have very good get-up game. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as the fighter's on the feet, Storley is going to just be live to get knocked out. Like, it kind of is that simple, in my opinion. Storley's biggest weakness throughout his entire career has been striking defense, especially, I would say, boxing defense. He just has his hands pretty high up there. He doesn't move his head at all. And what is Thaddeus' like best sort of skill set? He's a dynamic striker, man. He's a very tricky striker to deal with. He's got great movement. He hits very, very hard. He's got KO ability. And even if Thaddeus is down 2-0 to Storley based on Storley getting the takedowns, Gene is still going to be live to get a knockout in the 3rd round. He's still going to be live to get a knockout in the 4th round. He's going to still be live to get a knockout in the 5th round if his cardio is as good as I think it could be. I think in this matchup that Gene does knock out Logan Storley. I don't feel very confident in this one, I will admit. But I think that ultimately, as long as the fighter's on the feet, Gene is always going to be live for a knockout. And Gene is going to be pretty tall compared to Storley as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I will see you guys in the next one.